we listen, for instance, Seven Steps to Heaven or The Revolution Will Not Be Televised, we know immediately it's you. I mean, everyone can tell. How did you succeed to keep such a strong identity, adapting your style and sound to different musical contexts?
Well, at some point I decided that I wanted the bass to sound like this, how we define this. And when I made that decision to make the bass sound like a particular sound, my responsibility to that sound was to make that sound appear whenever I took the bass out of the case. Whether it's 2 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I have to remember what it took to make that sound, and it took to make what makes this sound necessary for my notes to have an effect. I still work on that. Every day I play the bass, I'm concerned that the sound I got on Monday is the same sound I got on Friday of last year. And I think it's just this consistency in making the sound the same has been able to make me have a personal sound that people easily identify.
Speaking about sound, in your opinion, what should a bass player or a cellist, which you play beautifully, study to develop a personal sound? Did you transcribe also horn solos?
I never did that, and I didn't. When I was coming up in my age group, that wasn't a possibility. We would listen to records and understand what made them work, but we'd never sit down to a desk and write down a solo. It just wasn't the process at that time. But I think for players to get a sound that's theirs, they should listen to what's before them and find out what it took to make those specific sounds. When I came up, I was very curious as to Cecil Payne, a baritone saxophone player that I worked with, playing with Randy Weston for a couple of years. And what fascinated me about Cecil Payne was not only his solo concept and how well he played the instrument, but he played an instrument, a baritone saxophone, that was at the time being made famous by Jerry Mulligan, Pepper Adams, Harry Carney, Leo Parker, Serge Charloff, and Cecil managed to make the saxophone sound like Cecil Payne. And it seemed to me if that's possible for the saxophone, maybe the bass can do it as well. So I started to do that based on what I heard him do all those years.
You play with such band leaders as Art Blakey, Miles Davis and the Quintet. As everybody knows, they were strong persons who had strong ideas about their own music. What influence do they have on the way you lead your own bands?
Well, I've been playing with a lot of band leaders. Those are just two of them. And I think what I've tried to do is be aware of what it took for those guys to lead a band and what they did in leading the band, whether it was special about the way they programmed the music, whether they picked the keys of the song, whether they picked the library, whether they responded to an audience, whether the audience was respectful of the music, or whether they responded to a certain tempo. All these band leaders had their own way of dealing with these issues. Art Farmer did his way, Chet Baker did his way, Paul Desmond did his way, and my response to those various methods is to see how each guy handled the situation, how they talk to club owners, how they talk to the hotel owners, how they get the band to get to the hotel on time, how they manage the discipline of the band. All these people have their own ways to solve these issues. And what I've been able to do, I think, over the past 50 years or more is to kind of pick up one sentence from this guy and one sentence from that guy and put it in my own paragraph, so it makes me probably a more complete leader with all these various experiences that I was aware of.
I saw you playing last year at the Blue Note in New York with your quartet, and there was a beautiful conga player, Giovanni Hidalgo, and today we will play with Donald Vega, who comes from Nicaragua, and there's a talk about Spanish tinge since the very origins of jazz. Jelly Roll Morton spoke about that. Do you think that jazz will be more and more influenced by Latin music in the future?
It's hard to tell. It depends on what kind of exposure they get. It depends on how determined the Latin players are determined to make their music important. It depends on the level of talent involved in making the music sound Latin-ish. Depends on what kind of radio play they get. Depends on what kind of records they record. Depends on where they play. there's so many factors that could determine whether Latin music is more evident on the jazz scene.
And what about your music, Latin music?
I'm a product of my time. I'm like a sponge. If it feels good to my band, let's try to see if it make it work for my band.
What does makes you feel good about Latin music?
Just the music itself. It's a nice sound, nice chord progressions, great rhythms, great sincerity, great melodies, and it changes to interest me.